Hello and welcome to the A2Pcast for the week of August 21st, 2013. My name is Mike Reifenberry. I am the chief editor of AliveToPlay.com. With me is Mike Shupsky, professional economist extraordinaire and lover of all things Minecraft, and also Josh Hartman, professional Josh Hartman impersonator.
I'm pretty good at it.
He's very good at it. He's a professional. This week's edition is the Early Bird Gets the Preorders edition of the A2Pcast. Our topics today are, as you can probably imagine, Sony and their preorders. More broadly, the Gamescom press conferences, EA's, a little bit of EA's, and then mostly all of Sony. And then we also have our special topic today, which is going to be the videos from Belated Media. It's a YouTube channel you can check out, called What If Star Wars Episode 1 and 2 Were Good? We're going to talk about that a little bit, what we thought of that, what we think of the films as they currently are, and so let's jump right in. So Tuesday, that's the day we're recording. You won't be listening to it on Tuesday because Tuesday ends in about an hour, but Tuesday, the 20th, we had the Gamescom, EA, and Sony press conferences. We had The Sims, we had Titanfall, we had Battlefield 4, lots of Vita stuff, lots of PlayStation news. So let's start off with The Sims. Sims 4, actually. We got a trailer. I think you guys have some opinions about that.
Yes, we do have some opinions on The Sims 4
What would your
trailer.
opinions be?
My upfront opinion on the trailer for The Sims 4 is that the marketing team of The Sims 4 just woke up from a coma. They were in a terrible car accident in 1998, and they've just regained consciousness. And they thought that this would be something that would appeal to the United States of America and, more broadly, the world in 2013. It was retarded. Like, I mean, I understand that if you want to have a teaser trailer that doesn't show much about the game because you're not ready to show much about the game, but
What you should really go with is live action.
Yeah,
People love
I mean,
that.
this cheesy as hell live action trailer where the Sims come into it looked like the trailer for the Smurfs. that the Smurfs movie and the Sims trailer should not have anything in
The
common.
Smims 4.
And I felt insulted. I just felt insulted by how lazy and just
What would you have done differently?
what I would have done. I wouldn't have used live action, even if it had meant
Cutting the trailer down?
I would have. I mean, I could have just cut all the live action out.
Right.
There shouldn't have been a single instance of live action in the thing. I wouldn't have even mind if we didn't have environments. I would have gladly accepted the Sims in a white room,
Right.
talking to each other, being
Speaking
mildly
Simlish.
cute for 15 seconds,
Yeah.
with a trailer of music and white.
Yeah.
That would have been better than that. I mean, it's not really that important to get upset about it. And I know on the 22nd,
But if you can't get upset about The Sims, what can you get upset
I don't know.
about? You know?
Where will your aggressions go? On the 22nd, they are supposedly going to show us another gameplay
Okay.
trailer. We're going to actually see the game in action.
Oh,
Although that
there
also
we go.
brings into question,
If you're
Why-
going to show it on the 22nd, why not show it on the 20th?
why bother showing us this just to get us
Right.
excited? Which again brings me back to the point that they have a marketing team
That
that
didn't get us excited.
has no idea. No idea what marketing is.
Maybe they're trying to channel your anger into The Sims. They're all about the emotions. What they're doing is harvesting human emotions.
Apparently, the emotions are a big thing in Sims 4, and they just elicited an emotion from you.
That's some goddamn meta shit.
Yeah, well, here at Alive to Play, we are all about meta shit, as many important historians have noted. Well, they did show off some of the creation tools. You can sort of hand sculpt your Sims now, which I think is a really cool feature.
Yeah.
It's not so much sliders and presets as, and body types. You can even customize their walk style. So you have, like, the prissy lady run, where you have, pants on the ground, like, stride that you get.
These seem like all really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy, and I'm sure that's the
I'm
what,
sure
I think
the
what
game
makes me
itself
so
will be really
unhappy
good.
is that I'm going to really enjoy The Sims 4, and I don't
Right.
understand why I have why do they force cognitive dissonance upon me? I'm not sure the reasoning. They're always trying to streamline games, and the thing of last week they let journalists and reporters come into the studio, and they gave them a little demo of things where they described some of the features that they've got coming up, and they've got a quicker way to build houses by just having like prefabricated rooms.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They
That
did
you
mention
can, like,
that
drop
briefly.
in
Yeah, you can copy
to
and paste
create
entire
houses.
rooms, which I think is interesting in a sense that if you mess up, you say like, "Oh, I love the layout of this room. I love the everything that's going on in it." Instead of painstakingly like, "Well, move this wall, move this wall. How do the furniture fit in again here?" You just pick up the entire thing and drop it in, and I think that's a really interesting.
It's interesting. I'm not
thing,
sure
but-
it's entirely helpful, but for a certain type of player, I think it could be
think
helpful.
that's a good point, right?
Like if you don't, people who don't play The Sims as a house designer, which I don't understand, because
It's
after
it's
you've
the
spent
best.
5 hours on the house, you have to go to sleep, and then you're not going to remember those Sims when you wake up in the morning. So
But do the Sims really matter when you're building the house? It's like The Sims is like 2 games in one.
That's
you
true.
get like a wonderful like architectural thing, and you can make beautiful buildings, and then you can also play The Sims as a whole is intended to be played.
maybe it will be helpful. It'll help separate the games out a little better.
Yeah. Let's also talk about Frostbite 3. How everybody at EA is using Frostbite.
Those
3.
zombies.
Yeah,
The
Plants
Plants vs Zombies with Frostbite 3. I think we spoke about this a little bit earlier. Said that poor DICE, they would be making bank, except that they're owned by EA.
And
Those
now
licensing
EA
fees
cares.
would be through the roof because
Yes.
Frostbite 3 does beautiful things to games.
Yes.
But
But I'm very excited that Frostbite 3
oh
is
sure,
coming
it's
to
a great
everything.
thing. Yeah,
I'm super,
the
especially
new Mass Effect games.
especially,
Not that
yeah.
we saw anything of them.
especially the
Right.
BioWare games. I'm really excited.
Yeah. Oh, but
This-
Dragon Age is getting that.
This
We can
was
talk
my
about Dragon
this
Age
was
for a
my
second.
sticking point with Dragon Age is that it just looked awful. And
The
now
first one's right. Me too. It's like
looked
I
awful.
really enjoyed the because it's essentially KOTOR, but it shouldn't look like KOTOR. But it did. So it's I enjoy that type of game, but I could never really get into Dragon Age because it was just so
Ugly.
goddamn hideous. I think this could be a real turning point in the franchise because it looks so much better. They showed off some of like the facial models and character customization stuff briefly at the conference, and it was really quite impressive. I thought it was really good stuff. It doesn't look anything like cartoon Dragon Age Origins.
And
which I think is good.
hopefully no blood splatter on the face anymore with Dragon Age. I've had enough.
You know,
of that.
I think it's slightly endearing.
It is. I think it is
Uh,
kind of endearing, and that had nothing to do with the graphics. I mean, that was a conscious choice that they made.
I guess it was.
And I
Oh,
don't think it's
artistic
going
decisions, right? Which I think
they really are interested in making an
over the top.
unbelievably bloody game. I mean, actually, in fact, I can only hope that the blood is improved, and it covers everything, not just your face.
What, the blood?
You can
listen,
paint,
Blood-
paint
you can
the town,
Paint the town
paint
red.
The, town
the
red.
blood of demons.
Speckle the town red with the blood of
Yeah.
demons.
Spray. And then none of us are particular FIFA fans, but I thought it was interesting that they had a special sort of announcement about FIFA 14. Is that if you buy the game on a current gen system, your season stats, all of your personal stuff will carry over into the next gen copy of the game too. And I just thought that I think that's indicative of maybe fear on the part of consumers about carrying over your stats, your progress, because in the previous generation, Xbox One, PlayStation 2, original Xbox,
Yes.
should specify, and PlayStation 2, you had you didn't have the social integration that you have with the systems currently. And so now that people have built up this sort of like personal reputation, it's something that people really put a lot of pride in. I think there's kind of a fear, I think, in transitioning to a new system that like any of that being lost is like a big no for game companies, for publishers, developers, and of course the system manufacturers as well. So I wondered if you guys had any specific thoughts on if will this be like the general trend?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it hurts anything. I think it's a great idea to let this happen. It's not like something that's gonna it doesn't really have any long-reaching goals, because after a certain point, all of these games will be forgotten anyway.
Right.
Oh well, sure.
I don't think it really hurts anything, and I think it's a nice little way to help people.
It's a
want
way that people
to-
ease their passage
Yeah.
from the current console to the
To
next gen.
lubricate, if you will.
Yeah, it's a heavy dose of Vaseline to get you into the next generation, and it's I think it's probably relatively easy to do, and like I said, it's going to be inconsequential after the fact. It's not like this is a decision you have to grapple with
Oh
in
right.
3 years. It's just
Mhm.
something that you can just slap it on
well,
the top.
but think about it. I mean, people who have like 100,000, 200,000 gamer score, like those people really care about that kind of
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Oh, I suppose that's true. Yeah, but I was thinking more applied to specific games, like the gamer score. I think that's just logical.
Well, right, of course, but I just mean the whole trend of transferring current gen content, stats, achievements, whatever, to the next gen, to kind of keeping that profile continuous
Yeah.
throughout
The
generations.
fact that you don't have to start all the way at square one when you get the Xbox.
Yeah, right.
Or the PS4.
Yeah, I think
that's
it kind of
that's a
reflects
big
the
draw.
technology world in
Yeah.
general. Earlier, it wouldn't have mattered because there was no online play.
Right.
Well, I mean,
The
there
world-
was, but it was a much smaller.
I just mean the history of gaming.
Right.
These things that we didn't. This is the first time we've actually had a system of worldwide rankings across the entire industry.
It's true, yeah.
Even last generation, there was a few games had this. When you had to make the jump to 360, no one had to think about, oh my god, all those things I had on Xbox Live. It's there. I mean, it didn't exist.
Yeah. And it's the fact that so much of your online identity is now just kind of stored, as they say, in the cloud.
Yeah, in the cloud. I think it's a good idea. In the cloud is the way everything goes. And
Yeah.
to if they weren't doing that, I think we would be having
a very different conversation.
conversation
Yeah,
about
yeah.
how stupid they were. So
Right.
this is an appropriate move.
Cool. All right. So I think we'll move right into Sony's press conference. Then there's a lot of meat here to get into. Sony seems to always be the first. Well, I think we should just kind of get a general, the announcement. If you've been living under a rock for the past 24 hours, haven't heard the news, you have the PS4 be launched rather on November 15th in the US, the 29th in Europe, in 32 markets, as opposed to Microsoft's 13 markets. So those are like the basic things there. But it seems that Sony is always the first to pull the trigger in this generation. So you had them in February. They announced the system first, and Microsoft waited a long time, and now they're the first to announce a solid release date. And so I just want to get a sense of what do we think that means for Microsoft? What does that mean for Sony? Is Microsoft floundering?
I think Microsoft is always floundering, and yet they survive. I think you're right. Sony has been doing everything right this year, and I think it will help them. It gives the impression that PlayStation 4 will have. I mean, PlayStation 3 in the end did succeed. It started off not as well, but I mean, now it has had enough widespread adoption that they did, I think, make a profit on it. In the end, it was a
It's not
success.
just profit. It's that they have the PlayStation 3 has sold more units than the Xbox 360.
Right, because even though the worldwide market is really more important to consider, and PlayStation has never really lost their hold. Like Xbox has done a really great job in fighting
US.
Sony in North America. That is not true in every other part of the world, particularly not in Japan. Yeah, look at that. We say it all together. I mean, but,
yeah, it's true.
So in that respect, I mean, it kind of makes sense that Sony's doing a really good job, and Microsoft
but I
is
think,
lagging behind. But will it help them in the US? I'm not sure it will. I don't think Sony, still, even for myself, as much as I appreciate Sony's hardware more than I appreciate Xbox's hardware,
because it generally functions.
It generally functions. It didn't break the first time it came out. It didn't sound like a helicopter taking off. As with everything else, Microsoft,
Yeah,
everything they make is terrible, and it takes like 7 generations before them to catch up with other things.
You're still naming a console that sold almost as many units as the PS3. It's pretty amazing still that they completely tanked in Japan, completely tanked in all these markets, and still sold 70, 75, 70... What's the... I don't forget what the figure is.
Yeah, well, I mean, Xbox has done really well.
But this
and
is
I think that
even
it will
in Europe,
stay on,
Xbox
because the point I'm driving to here is just that through all of the good things that Sony's doing, right, as much as I would give them 5 thumbs up for everything they've done this year,
all 5,
they still don't have the games that I want. I mean, they have some good, like, they don't have enough good exclusives. All the games on Sony that I really want to play are now also available on Xbox. And in addition to that, Xbox still has that handful. It's getting smaller.
It is getting smaller.
That handful of games that I cannot find on Sony. And Sony's collection of exclusives, I just don't care. Infamous is not that good. I mean, it's fun. Infamous is fun, but it's not it's not console killing fun. I wouldn't buy a PlayStation for Infamous. I'll play it if it's in front of me and I'll have a good time.
But I think, you know, honestly, I feel like, and I do sympathize with that. Probably to the point of, again, buying an Xbox, as unfortunate as it is, before I buy a PS4. But I think for a lot of people that's not the case. I think a lot of people are going to say this console, at least at first, is going to have relatively the same games, relatively the same hardware, at least in terms of what do I see on the screen initially. You know, you're not going to see any sort of major difference in graphical quality until, you know, several years down the line, and if it's an exclusive, so if Naughty Dog is making something 2 or 3 years from now, sure, it might look better than something that comes out on the Xbox One. But, you know, at least at launch, you've got more or less all the same titles. You have more or less the same experience, but you have a $100 price difference, and you have a system backed by a company that seems to know what it's doing. That, as they said in their press conference today, they really, shots fired, but rightfully so, I think. They haven't changed their message.
They have Minecraft now.
They also
and
have
that is big. And I feel in a strange position in life. It feels like a big life change. I'm ready. I've always been ready to jump ship from Xbox, and I would love to not have to buy an Xbox. I would love to be able to just commit myself to having a PlayStation, because I as everything is here, I just trust the company more.
Yeah,
they're going to make a better product. Even now,
the experience will be better.
I have not touched them, but I would be willing to bet money that when we touch an Xbox One, it's going to feel like a plastic chintzy piece of junk, and when we touch a PlayStation 4, it's going to feel more solid. Down to the very things that Johnny Ive talks about in Apple products.
Right.
Some things feel cheap and some things feel good. And PlayStation has always felt better. And I'm talking literally physical feeling.
Oh, yeah,
but
sure.
it says something about the quality of how it's made. And the Red Ring of Death story kind of supports that.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah. And it's, you know, the interior of the product is as important as the exterior of the product. And the interior of the product on the Xbox 360, you know, the Red Ring of Death was, what, like a soldering issue, right?
Yeah,
I think it was like
in order to hold the thing together, they needed to use a lot of like thermal. There's a word I'm looking for here. Padding and like thermal insulation. They needed to use a lot of stuff to hold it together, but the very thing that they needed to like hold it together it trapped too much heat and destroyed it. It was a paradoxical machine.
Right. Exactly. And so you have this machine that's like, you know, not saying that it looked particularly great on the outside. But, you know, the interior was garbage in its construction, and it showed on the exterior because, you know,
it couldn't help itself.
Died.
And so, not to just start talking about design as we're getting trailed off here, but I want to find a good reason to be able to jump to PlayStation. But so far, they haven't been able to give it to me. They're getting better, because the PlayStation 3 versus the 360, I think, is much stronger. The 360 has a stronger selection than the PlayStation 3 does across the board. Now, there are some big differences between those, but in this generation, they just keep disappearing. Metal Gear was one of the big ones.
Yep.
I mean, now, Metal Gear is on Xbox. It's astonishing. Konami games are coming to 360, or coming to Xbox One. And so that's helped. I mean, it helps Xbox a lot. And the more they become equal, because I'm entrenched in Xbox and I have all of that gamer score and I have all the friends list and I have I'm already paying that subscription per year. I can't just have a level playing field in order to jump to PlayStation. They need to give me something more to make me make a switch. And they still haven't done that. And that's unfortunate, but I don't know if they can for North American customers.
Well, I think the big point that I want to make is the point that you made. So if someone forced me to go in November and pick one of the two machines, I'd walk in and I'd see one is $400, one is $500. They both play roughly the same games. They both perform pretty much exactly the same. For me, the choice is easy. I go with PS4.
It says The Economist. So case closed. I suppose.
It's and you see it in the pre-orders. PS4 has 1 million pre-orders.
That's
1 million units on day one that people are pre-ordered. That doesn't even begin to touch people who have, stupidly said, "Oh, whatever, I'll just pick it up." Yeah, well, first of all, you're not going to pick it up. You're going to be waiting a while. But, it doesn't take into account any of those people who, want to just walk in and buy it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. That is the core demographic of... Well, could that come around and hurt Sony? The core demographic of people who are going to be the people who focus entirely just on the price point. We can assume that these are going to be people who are not established gamers.
Right.
People, grandmothers
and
aunts finding
Grandma's
things.
Grandma's going to love the PS4.
Right. But can Grandma buy a PS4?
Right. Or is she going to?
Is this Christmas going to come around?
Well,
can they meet the production
demand? Can Microsoft meet the production demand? Who knows? These are very complicated questions. And I would say, I imagine Xbox One doesn't have as many pre-orders for obvious reasons. They still have a healthy amount.
I think once the DRM policy shifted, I think didn't have pre-orders pretty much sell out immediately.
I think they opened back up in a big way, and people plowed through them again.
And that reminds me of the shifting policies. We could still squeeze some more stuff out of Microsoft. It seems at this point, if Sony keeps firing those bullets. Is Microsoft just going to keep caving on things? Are they going to drop? Are they going to drop the price? Are they going to finally say, "Okay, we'll give you a version without Kinect"? How much more can Sony put the heat on them that they will, in the end, and help the consumers who aren't so sold on this?
I think
punching inanimate objects in your living room.
I think the price point is the one thing they will not cave on, because they're trying. Even when they shifted the policy and said Kinect is not mandatory now, they're still trying to sell you on the Kinect. They are saying the reason you're paying $100 more is because of the
Kinect is so essential. Yet it's not integrated enough.
In any other year of my life, I would say you're totally right. It's not going to happen. But
so much.
Could you have said the same thing about an always online console that is now not even close to being always online?
Right.
I guess
it's just I'm shocked, and again, we don't want to go too far off the trail here, but I'm honestly shocked that Microsoft really pushed Xbox One as this big thing. It had to be always online because that was the core of the system. It had to use the Kinect all the time because that was the core of the system. You have to have the hand motions, you have to have the voice commands, you have to do all of these things. But then they just sort of take them away. It seems very easily. It's not actually something that's so integral to the system that it can't be removed because that would change the dynamic of using the entire system. No, the system's pretty much the same. It's just these extra things they've tacked on, which makes you kind of wonder, did they really need to be there in the first place, or is it just Microsoft trying to really push their Kinect by, doing an Apple move, but doing it in the worst way possible, which is to say, giving you a product and saying, no, you have to use it like this because it's essential, but not actually making a quality product that isn't actually essential.
That's a good point, because, we just go back to the numbers. Okay, so 75 million people. I think only about 20 million people have used Kinect. So that means there's about 50 million gamers out there, myself included, who have no use for Kinect. So for Microsoft,
because Kinect still feels gimmicky, even on the Xbox One.
Right.
It feels
for
gimmicky.
Microsoft to tell me that I need to pay an extra $100, that's okay, but you need to give me a good reason
really
why
good
I need
reason.
it.
You have to
And I
convince me that the
haven't-
hardware is going to work too.
And I haven't seen it yet. And this goes back to wrap it around to Sony. Sony has already introduced a Playroom.
Yeah.
And it's going to be essentially, well, I guess not free, but like they're just going to tack that on. It's essentially it's like all the same. Not all the same features of the Kinect, but it's the same idea.
It's the same idea, and honestly, the Gamescom trailer they showed for Playroom, I thought was much more interesting than anything I've seen on the Kinect, because it not only read your motion, or in Playroom's case it tracked the Move controller, but it had a sort of altered. Not altered, altered reality, or augmented reality. There we go.
Yes.
You had augmented reality stuff going on, so you have these little critters running around the floor, or like champagne. Right, you could kick them and they would move out of the way, or you have your controller turns into a champagne bottle that sprays all of your friends, or lights one of your friends' heads on fire. But it's it tracks all that stuff, and it puts things inside your real space, instead of just tracking your body motion. And I think, honestly, the saddest part of all of this is that the most interesting things that people did with the Kinect 1.0 were hacks done on a PC. No one did anything interesting with a Kinect on the Xbox. It was all done through PC. And
they've now made it so that you cannot use
right,
the
they've made a
Kinect for
PC
anything
version
else.
of the Kinect with an SDK you can download, which I think is garbage. But people in universities, people at Temple, the school that we all go to or went to, I know there were people there doing a project with 3 different Kinects, which is basically creating not just a depth image, but a 3-dimensional image of people moving in 3-dimensional space, which is just really, really interesting, crazy stuff that everyone was doing with this. But none of it came to the Xbox for whatever reason. And I'm just not convinced we're going to see anything that interesting on the Xbox One.
I just think third-party content or third-party providers just looked at it and said,
"What are we going to do?
What are we going to do with this?"
Yeah,
controllers are so much better.
You mentioned the thing, the Apple thing, and I know we wanted to talk about that. And I think this is a great point to bring it up about products, demanding that you use products, and then not having those products follow through to function. Because it's now happened twice that people have compared the Xbox One to Apple, and
at least in a high-profile way.
In a high-profile way, and the question comes up: is that true? We have the quote here. It's Microsoft is like the Apple of video games, or Farhad Manjoo of Slate saying Xbox One is the product Steve Jobs always wanted to make. And is that really the case? I mean, on the surface, you can say that these things are there. It doesn't. The transfer away from not using disks, putting things in the cloud.
That's true, but I think so much of design is execution. I mean, all of design, is execution. The entire thing. It's how does it feel in your hands? How does it work on a really small tactile level? And Microsoft just doesn't produce technology that feels like quality, that feels like something Apple would make. To be completely frank about it. The quote that you said, that Microsoft is like the Apple of video games, that comes from lead designer of Titanfall, Fairfax McCandlish, which is a hell of a name. And he's talking about no disk, the cloud saves, and again, what he claims is zero latency servers. Again, these are all kind of lofty goals.
Yeah, things that are easy to say.
Right, things that are very easy to say.
If Steve Jobs were still alive, he would agree with, these are good things that we would like to do.
But of course, all those are great things, but can Microsoft execute on them? And I just think they haven't shown anybody anything in the past. I mean, we still have trouble connecting, staying in a party chat together on...
Party chat is
Xbox.
Still a barely passable feature.
So to go from a barely...
To trust a company that can't keep 5 people in a party on a consistent basis, that shouldn't... I mean, even if some people have more trouble than others, even if the majority of people don't usually have trouble with it, the fact that anyone has trouble with it for a company that's then going to come out and make these grand claims...
Right. To say that we're having
cloud.
zero latency servers, I'll believe it when I see it, to be honest. Maybe they'll make this grand transformation, but I'm just not holding my breath. I just don't believe it. And I think we should go on to something else there, because we've got off on Microsoft rants, and it's supposed to be about Sony for the most part. Though, I think we should actually maybe take a step back. Well, let's talk about this. We have the Vita integration. The Vita's now dropped in price to $199, and then we have the PlayStation 3, which is a 12 gigabyte system that's also $199. So let's talk for a second about what the hell are we going to do with a 12 gigabyte PlayStation 3 system.
This is the ugly one, right? The one that looks like...
The new Slim.
The new one that looks like a DVD player that has the manual tray, which is really obnoxious.
The one that...
No slot loading, which, again...
takes everything I tried to tell earlier in this podcast about what was nice about Sony's quality of construction and throws it right back in my face.
The thing about it is they obviously pumped this one out as a sort of cheapie. Which is fine. I'm sure it still probably functions better than your typical Xbox. Though I do love the touch buttons on the 360 Slim that do not appear on the 360e model, which is the one they announced at E3 this year. It has all physical buttons. It's not an attractive system. So this, that's moral of the story is final generation Slim systems are stay away from those. Those are ugly.
I was still always a big fan of the touch buttons on the original PlayStation. They were lovely when I used the first PlayStation 3, the big honking PlayStation 3.
The big one.
Although that was still quieter than a 360.
Yes.
I thought it was lovely that it had a slot loading drive and you could just go boop and it happened. And now, Xbox has it for both of their buttons. But
they don't have slot loading. Anyway, I think again we're getting really sidetracked here. We need to swing it back around to so the Vita. Let's touch on the Vita really quickly. I know none of us are really Vita experts, but the Vita before today was $299, I believe, and barring any sales or anything, regular retail price of $299. But Nintendo's 3DS, apologies, is about $169 or $200 depending on the model you get. And it's been the best-selling console for the last 3 months of all of them, not just handhelds. Can the Vita, with its new price point, compete with the 3DS?
I don't think so.
No, it's not even close to competing with the 3DS.
Even with the dropped price point, I will say the Vita is a slick device. It looks really cool.
It really is.
A lot of really cool things, but it's being eaten away by two fronts. The Nintendo 3DS, which is cheaper and it has a bigger demographic. It's geared more towards kids and stuff.
Which I think are probably more likely to have a handheld gaming device.
Exactly.
I would assume.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason for that, but make your second point before we get lost on that.
Right.
Oh, and smartphones and tablets.
Which I think are eating the adult side of the market.
Yes. So
right.
It's being eaten away.
So you have this awkward middle ground of just nerdy teenagers.
Right.
Who are really all about gaming, who want to be able to game with their stuff
and
everywhere.
That's totally cool.
But I think even still, the problem is with the Vita is that I don't think there's actually a market for the Vita, because the only demographic,
entire point we just made.
But more than that, though you mentioned the people who want it, but they still don't actually need it, and even when they buy it, how much can they actually use it?
This is the entire point.
Where is the need for a high-powered portable device? A person who is going to get anything out of having high-powered, graphically impressive gaming in the palm of your hand either they're children who don't care, or they're adults who don't have time to play portable games. The reason why I think the Android iPhone games are so popular is because they're really easy to do on a train or on a subway.
Right. They're
You're
quick,
not going
they're
to
simple.
power up
with
Assassin's Creed
on
the
to
subway
play a deep story.
To the work.
Right.
So what are you gonna play it in your home? Like teenagers when they come home from school, you're sitting in the same room as your PlayStation?
Right.
Where do you go for kids get it because they're always driven places by their parents.
Right.
They're always being taken somewhere with nothing to do.
Sure.
People who have things to do don't actually have enough time in transit to need to play a game of that level.
It's true, and I think we should stay away from saying absolutely no one. But
Well, I'm sure that there
right,
are. There's
I mean,
always
there
gonna be
are
someone
right.
to buy it.
There's
But in
there
terms
is
of
some demographic.
a market to
Right.
actually make a
But I
product
think,
successful.
but I think this
right.
was Sony's thinking when they said we're going to integrate the Vita into the PS4 or PS. Is it both PS3
Well,
and PS4
I mean,
experience?
and this is the thing. This is another question of execution. Is they kind of, I think, said it for the PS3, and
Yeah, I
nothing
remember
really
them
came
saying
of
it,
it.
but not really
You know,
doing
they really tried to push it, I think, and we heard the same thing this year, and they said, again, they haven't nailed down anything absolute, so they haven't said, yes, every single PS4 game will be playable on the Vita. It's just most of them, or some of them, or a majority, but it's always, these sort of vague terms. How integrated will it really be? Will the experience really be worth it? I mean, it's neat to be able to say, like, oh, someone's using the TV that my PlayStation's connected to. We're not a normal American family that has multiple TVs in the house. I've got to go and play it on my Vita because that's the only thing I can do. That's a neat feature, but will it work as well as they say it will work? Will people actually use it for that? I mean, do people... I mean, this is a question about the Wii U as well,
Yeah.
I think, is,
Big question.
do people actually use that tablet screen
To play games.
to play games when
on
someone
its
else
own.
is using the TV?
Especially
Maybe.
when it's not wireless, right? It has to be.
No, the tablet's wireless.
Oh, is the tablet wireless? I
Yeah.
thought it was. Maybe I'm just
No,
thinking.
no,
of the,
no, it's-
No, I mean, it has a limited range, of course,
Right.
but yeah, it's still wireless, but you have to be there still.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it would be pretty cool if you were able to not have limited range. If
that's
you-
true. So see if
That
it
would be
right
cool.
if
I know I'm thinking in the distant future, the way distant future. Well, maybe not, but
maybe not. I
not
mean,
not
you
where
have
we
data
are right
plans,
now.
right?
But I think that would be
That would be really
that
cool.
would- that would
Remotely
be a
turn
next
your
step.
system on
yeah.
and play your Vita games over 3G, 4G.
Yeah.
On the train, on the
I
subway.
think that would
in
rejuvenate
Isn't that what
between
they
things.
say? Isn't that what their plan
No,
was?
it's over Wi-Fi.
Has to be.
It's
only over
I mean, that
Wi-Fi,
makes
and I
sense,
think it's
because
it's
that's
like,
a lot to stream. Over
Oh, yeah.
that's a lot of data.
Right.
But I think it comes back to the original point. Even if you could do that, what kind of person? I mean, in 20 minutes on the train,
it's true.
It's a very
still,
small
it's still a
subset of
very
people
small
who will
market.
feel compelled to play a full-on action game on public transit. It's much easier to do Angry Birds and
Yeah.
not think about
right
it, and then
with a
your
device you
suitcase
already
and go.
have on you all the time. Anyway.
Right.
Right. So moving on from there, we have let's just briefly sort of question the universe. What the hell are we going to do with a 12 gigabyte PlayStation 3? Granted, it's $200, but what can you possibly do with it on a system that?
On top of the fact, is it really 12 gigabytes? Because remember the 13
right.
gigabyte
It's-
Xbox,
right. It's
of which
formatted.
you could use 2.
It's right. It's formatted to probably be 9 or 10 gigabytes at most. So I mean, there are games that have installs that are larger than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, like
how can you?
You're not allowed to play Metal Gear Solid 4 without installing the disc before you play it.
Oh, you can't play it like anything on the PS3. All of them have mandatory installs. So it's what do you do with it? What is the point of the system? I'm actually baffled. If someone knows, let us know, please, because I have no idea. You can watch Netflix with it. You can play Blu-rays. That's cool, but I mean, what?
Buy a Roku.
Yeah, I mean, buy an Apple TV, buy a Roku, buy a laptop that has Netflix on it. I mean, I don't understand that move at all. I mean, I get it's nice to have a $200 PlayStation, but they're currently selling a 250 gigabyte system, a bundle for 250 gigabytes for $250. So, I mean, why can't you give us maybe 120, 160 gigabyte slim model for 200, 220?
I would even accept like an 80 or like a 50 even. I think they're thinking.
At least then you can fit a couple of games on it, but I just don't
I
understand.
think their thought process was they're going to sell this to people who just want the PS3 for maybe half a year before they make the jump to the PS4, to the next generation, essentially. But like you said, what are you going to do?
Well,
with
it's a lot of
12 gigs?
disposable income still.
Yeah, I don't understand the move at all. The point here, I think, that I want to get to though is, will Microsoft drop their the price of their even just their base model 360 to compete?
I mean, it's
Or I suppose maybe they won't have to because I mean, their current 4 GB system is $200. And now Sony's sort of
Yeah, I mean, maybe, because
handicapped.
I did think it was crazy. Like, I thought all year, I thought for sure when the new Xbox came out, they would have to lower the price of the 360.
Yeah.
But then they kind of, and that is that's
then
so
the E-model
logical
came
that
out.
like every person in the world would think that, and so they got around that by inventing a new version of it, so that they could superficially say, "Oh no, we couldn't possibly make it cheap. It's new.
It's new.
We just made
right.
this one. It's
This
brand new."
Yeah, right. But I mean, I assumed that would take over the $300 price point, and you'd see the slim models, the regular slim models, drop down from there.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't. You saw they share the price point now, and so I wonder, will Microsoft either drop the price down, depending on how you're looking at it, either to match Sony or to maybe get a leg up on Sony, or I mean, is it just too unpredictable?
I
Is it
can't
just
predict this company anymore.
No.
It's too unpredictable, and it's
You
so
just can't
late
know.
in the console cycle. It's like, I don't know. What are they gonna? I'm sure it's going.
They
to
may
drop
not
at some
know.
point.
I mean, they give
just
the
don't know.
impression that half the company doesn't know what they're going to do the day after tomorrow. They make decisions on the fly and they announce it. Here we're gonna go. You can just imagine someone constantly running into rooms with papers falling out of their arms. I gotta get him. Like the entire state of Washington is just people from Microsoft jumping around the trees and bursting into windows and driving from office to office.
Right. Okay, well, I guess since we have no ideas about that, let's touch very briefly on Sony's perception or their attempts at being perceived as indie developer friendly or just developer friendly in general, as opposed. I mean, they haven't really specifically said as opposed to Microsoft. But everyone kind of gets that.
I mean, everything
It's,
they do
you know,
is kind of
I mean, everything
Microsoft.
leading up to this launch has sort of been like, look at how good we are compared to those assholes. So, is this just good marketing? Do we think it's true? I mean, I tend to think that it's.
I think it's a mixture of both. I mean, they know that they need to say that they're in support of indie games. I think in general, there's a lot.
Actually are.
I mean, I don't think that they're not in favor of it. I mean, I just don't think that's really
they
the
have an
point.
open development platform. I mean, they give out loaner systems. They, you can self-publish on the PS4. I mean, I don't think that's that's not just talk. That's
Well, yeah, I just think that from the point of view of where they are now, I think the marketing and phrasing of it is more important than what they actually do down the road. We're talking about the image that they're trying to perceive.
Well, right,
I think they're allowed to speak big, and I think it's a good idea.
My point is the image they're projecting the one that they're actually cultivating.
I hope so, but I do think I do agree that I think they are genuinely interested in promoting indie titles and indie games. I think it'll help. Like it'll be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They say we're all about it, and then they actually do it. It just gets them even more goodwill.
I mean, I think it's a good idea if they do it, because I think in terms of a lot of technology we have, like indie seems to be
it's on the rise.
The way of the world.
Yeah,
as much as they try and stop piracy and the record companies and movie companies and
it's happening.
Pick a media.
Right.
This is the trend, and if you can't see it, there's something wrong with you. Although,
or you're Stephen Ballmer.
Or you're Steve Ballmer. You know,
he's all about
give it up for him.
Developers. All right. I think we're probably good there. Let's transition. I think to our second topic. We're only doing the 2 topics today. And that is, what if Star Wars Episode 1 and 2 were good? Now, these are 2 separate videos. One was released, I believe, about a year ago. That was the Episode 1. And then just, I believe, like last week.
Last week.
Right, we got what if Star Wars Episode 2 were good? And I imagine maybe in another year we'll have what if Episode 3 was good. And it's from this channel called Belated Media, I mentioned before. And he talks about what he would do differently to make Star Wars the Star Wars prequels good, because I think any reasonable person can agree that they just aren't as good as the original trilogy, and there are some very specific reasons why. And so I think we should just kind of, go through what we thought about his changes, what we would change, maybe do differently than he did, or things that we really liked.
Yeah, I think we can all, the three of us, all I know, agree that the most important and best change, the two most important, the three most important and best changes that he made in order are who was the main character, and he says Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Done deal.
Absolutely.
Done deal.
Not a
Episode
question.
1, 2, 3,
Totally
Obi-Wan
on.
is the main character. Everything
As Luke was in the
Yes.
original trilogy.
Totally on
So
board
you
with
have-
that idea.
Number 2, Anakin Skywalker has no business fighting around in battles as a child. The entire space battle in Episode 1, just get rid of it. It's totally unnecessary.
It is,
He's
yeah.
not the main character.
Right.
He shows up halfway through the movie. Nobody likes him. He's useless. Absolutely
so-
irrelevant.
right.
Number 3, Jar Jar Binks
Jar
doesn't
Jar Binks,
exist.
yeah.
He's gone. But Obi-Wan being the main character is important because it needs a main character. And I really love the way he restructured the movies. I'm not so certain about some of the scenes he wanted to put in, particularly the climax that he chose for Episode 2. I think an execution would need to change more because it felt awkward.
Yep.
It felt... I mean, it just kind of, it didn't feel...
I mean, I
don't know if I
think-
have a word... I'm trying to find the word
I
that
think
want.
there's an elegant way to execute that that scene, and for you guys who probably have no idea what we're talking about, I think, and help me out if I'm messing any of this up. So Darth Maul either doesn't die in Episode 1 or is sort of reanimated as like a half machine, half Sith.
Which, by the way, they did in Star Wars Clone Wars in the Cartoon Network CG animated series. They brought Darth Maul back, and he had a robot lower half. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
So that's actually a thing.
That's actually
okay. Well, Star
it's
Wars
actually a
canon
thing.
says it's actually a thing.
Yes.
So
Why not do
again,
it?
not really
Why
even a
not
big
do it?
stretch here. And they have him as sort of the main villain of the prequels.
I mean, Obi-Wan needs an arch nemesis.
Right,
Luke
exactly, as you
Skywalker
said.
needed a Darth Vader. Obi-Wan could use a Darth Maul.
right,
And
exactly.
and especially the way they set it up, like where I think it was in Episode 1 where he was. What was the scene where he was like defending Padme? He went after to save Padme, and he left.
in doing
and
that,
left Qui-Gon
to-
alone with Darth Maul.
Yeah.
and then
There's
Qui-Gon
actually
dies.
like a tragic, dramatic
Yes.
necessity to that, as opposed to I couldn't run
Oh, right, I
fast
couldn't
enough. I
run-
got
yeah.
up
They-
behind the force field.
Right, as they can jump out of the way to deflect laser blasts. So they can jump like crazy around the Naboo power reactor.
Can't make
But
it
he
through
can't
some force
run
fields.
through some random force fields fast enough to get to Qui-Gon. It's just a stupid thing to do, and that puts some real dramatic tension in there. It makes him choose. He's not passive. He's active. He's actively choosing to go to Padme, with whom he has a little bit of a love interest in this sort of reimagining.
with a more age appropriate
yes,
way.
Right. Or at least initially, that sort of gets turned around later, of course. But it makes him an active participant instead of just, I'm stuck behind a force field because they needed a reason to separate the characters. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Well, we can build back up to the climax of Episode 2.
Mhm.
But let's just go through the rest. He says changing Naboo to Alderaan is a great idea, and it
Oh,
really
yeah.
is. It's
I can't even. I'm ashamed of myself that I never even
never thought about that. But
It
makes the
absolutely
destruction
necessary.
of Alderaan. It ties in Leia later on. It's so.
Yeah.
It's really why
didn't they?
Why would you invent an entirely new planet that he consistently mispronounces?
Naboo.
Naboo. George
Naboo.
Lucas calls it Naboo every time he
The
gives an interview.
Goongans,
The
the
Goongans.
Goongans, and the
Goongans,
Naboo.
Naboo, and the laser swords. And like he's supposed to be the one who. It's the only time that I don't trust a creator on his own work.
Maybe that should have been the title of our podcast this week.
Maybe.
Goongans, Naboo.
The
And
Goongans,
laser
the
swords.
Naboo, and the laser swords. But the
Whoa.
Alderaan thing, and that ties in closer with also bringing Bail Organa in
Right.
earlier and actually making him related to Padme. It makes it more relevant because Episode 3 happens, And this guy, Jimmy Smith, just shows up.
Yeah. Hey, buddy, what's up?
He's never been in it before.
He's just there.
And
suddenly.
all of a sudden, he's one of the most trusted advisors to Yoda.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make it. He's just there. It's like George Lucas got there and, oh my God, how is she gonna? I forgot. And so he just invented something to go. But whereas, I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't.
It's predicated on the idea that you must have seen the original trilogy, and that's why you're watching these. They're not films that can stand up on their own. They're things that are using the original trilogy as a crutch, this huge support.
To go back to Yoda, I liked his idea of never showing Yoda on screen in Episode 1.
Right.
Building the legend of Yoda.
Right. It makes him more of a mystery character.
All the way in Episode 5 that much better.
Well, he says he does. They do talk in Episode 2.
Yeah, episode 2
That's the one thing I would disagree. I would still not. I would not show him just the whole time. I would just like.
I think that's totally fair point.
Completely off screen, or if you have to show him, dear God, do not let him hold a lightsaber.
No, he did say that.
Well, obviously, no lightsabers for Yoda. Yoda should never touch a lightsaber.
Yeah, but
after all of those speeches we got in Episode 5, Yoda cannot be in the same shot as a lightsaber.
Yes,
or even a battle. Yoda shouldn't be in a battle.
No,
Yoda is
he should be above all that.
Yeah, Yoda is the wise one. He should not be the general of an all-out war.
I mean, Jedi in general should probably not have been generals.
Right.
But
Guardians of Peace and Justice in the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Also, military strategists, not so much.
Sure.
Those are different people.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind Yoda coming in later, but I think it's true that Yoda needs to be used very sparingly because he's Yoda.
Yeah.
And that's just logical. And because we're just on the topic of the Bail Organa being related to Padme, he also severed the actual familial relationship between Anakin and Uncle Owen.
Owen Lars.
Owen Lars, right.
Right. And sort of brought him on as a sort of pseudo sidekick, which I thought was a brilliant idea. So you have Owen.
More reasons to have things be relevant in the original trilogy.
Right. So you bring him in, you plant the seed early on, and you have, he has Owen Lars come in Episode 2 as just like this nerdy pilot or something. He just goes, "Oh my God, you're Anakin Skywalker. I heard about what you did,
Samuel Tarly.
Yes.
Yeah, very Samuel Tarly, Game of Thrones. So, just comes up kind of bumbling, whatever. But, he's a cool guy. They sort of form a sort of friendship. They're pals. And he acts as a sort of sidekick.
And it also makes sense that he would take in Luke Skywalker after all this has happened.
Right, he makes a really important point to say, why would they raise this child of this crazy person who showed
up once, killed a bunch of people, buried a body, and then ran away? That's a crazy thing to do.
2 years later, they bring, hey, this is his kid.
This is his kid.
All right, let's get the blue milk.
Bring the blue milk. We're going to have a feast. Yeah, right. He makes the point, a very good one. It makes absolutely no sense that even if they're related-ish, but they're related through marriage of a slave.
More George Lucas. Why?
Doesn't really
well,
make sense.
He was his uncle. So let me think of the most complicated and non-believable way to make that make sense.
Right.
He's his uncle.
When you could have just said, well, he's uncle, but he's not actually uncle. It doesn't have to actually be uncle.
Yeah, because he was one of his best friends.
Right. So that's a thing that happens literally all the time.
Also makes more sense in Episode 4 that
absolutely
Owen knows who Anakin is. Yeah. He met him more than once. He has severe reservation about Luke going off and doing anything because he doesn't want him to be like his father.
Right.
His father, who in the canon, he doesn't know. Does Owen know Anakin at all?
He meets
outside of murdering
sand people.
He murdered sand people, and then he left. And according to everything that I know about Star Wars, they never again speak. So, how in Episode 4, how does Owen have any... there's no relationship there. Even if he, against all odds, decided to raise his child, how does he have opinions on the man?
I don't know. I mean, maybe Obi-Wan, he drops the baby off and he goes, oh, by the way, his father's Darth Vader.
Yeah, or maybe he wrote him a book.
Yeah, he wrote him a little guide.
Here are my notes about what Anakin was like. It's just more reason.
Yeah, it makes it so much more unbelievable. As opposed to just, he was a family friend, he was a pal. And then, and I think it makes it a lot more tragic, too. In 3, inevitably, when Anakin turns and becomes, evil, however that happens, in this sort of reimagined way, I think it makes it that much more tragic because you have Owen is almost like the stand-up guy. You know, he's he's the sidekick. He's all about justice. He's not quite as sharp and fast as Anakin, but you know, goddamn it, he tries. He's loyal. He's a good guy, and so you really feel his pain when Anakin turns to the dark side, and you know, maybe does something that really personally, on a really deep personal level, hurts Owen. And then Owen kind of says, you know what, I'm done with all of this. I'm going to go live out the rest of my life in a place I don't want to be a part of any of this. I'm done. And he gives up. It makes it so much better and more tragic and moving than just like, oh, he's a moisture farmer on Tatooine. And he's never left Tatooine. Farmer. Like, that's... Again, I'll just say, that's so stupid. It could have been really done in so much, in a much
and
more
I think you touch
way.
on something that would be a nice way to kind of finish up this topic with. Knowing that episode 3 is coming, what do you think he should do? Because I just thought, like, there's so many stupid things in episode 3. Padme dies of a broken heart.
I think we need to segue through that, but we need to get to the climax of episode 2. What happens at the climax of episode 2?
The climax of episode 2. I think it feels too forced because he keeps going back and forth between like these different characters in different places, and like they're moving in between. It's like a really complicated like changing of scenery that's going back.
But I think
running into
more in the way that he describes it. Because so the basic setup here is we'll try this again. Is that the Separatists and the Senators are having a sort of meeting. It's like the last ditch effort. Right, to sort of make amends, to bring, you know, the two sides to some sort of agreement. And the Separatists say, well, I mean, the Republic has been assassinating our leaders. And then the Senate goes, well, you've been attacking, you know, our, you know, buildings and stuff. And then, you know, the Separatists go, no, we haven't. We haven't done anything. You've been the antagonizers here. And then the Senators go, no, you guys have been killing our people. And then meanwhile, Darth Maul, who is in this version still alive, is flying into the base. Flying in, they ask for, you know, confirmation codes for his StarCraft, whatever. No response. And then he ends up, you know, just as these two parties sort of realize, oh shit, maybe there's something else deeper going on. You know, kabooms, basically. He comes in, attacks people, and then it's just kind of pandemonium, and then Obi-Wan and Anakin have to come in, save the day. There's action, fighting. They get diverted.
Count Dooku is also a much more sympathetic character.
Much more sympathetic character. He sort of sacrifices himself for the cause, kind of thing. You know, and I think with some clever editing, I think that could totally work.
Yeah, I think it could work, but I just think
I wouldn't trust it to George Lucas, but
the writing itself, I think, just needs to be a little bit more elegant.
It needs to be tighter, but it just feels a bit too like.
I love the idea, though.
I loved it. I thought it was great.
Maybe it is all in the way he presented it. Just feels a little too like a 12-year-old. I remember writing scripts when I was 12 or 13. That seems like something I would write. Just the way he presents it, and they come in here and they're having a meeting to talk about the way they're going to get their wars to end, and I just think, I mean, would they really? Would they really all just kind of come together and talk?
Well, I mean,
maybe it all depends on the whole build-up.
Of course, it all has to make sense. But I think if you can get those characters to that place in a believable way, the climax totally works.
And could you imagine how epic that lightsaber duel would be?
Right, and again, so much more charged
because it actually has emotional reasons.
A roboticized Darth Maul,
and he has robot
freaking
legs.
On between Obi-Wan
and it doesn't have.
It
could be cool because it had reason, not just
lightsabers.
Not Mr. I have an accent for no reason and 4 arms, but I'm not a Jedi because I'm a man. I'm not a man. I'm a whatever the fucking Grievous was.
General Grievous.
He was a general.
He was
a lizard in a robot suit with asthma.
Yeah, he had severe asthma. We have no idea who he is. Again,
yeah, right.
What things that can happen in episode 3? We don't need that character.
No,
scrap
him. No, scrap him entirely. Yeah.
But this goes back to your point. I don't know because like he completely changed episode 2. For the better.
But
is there anything left for episode 3?
I mean, there's the inevitable downfall. Yes. Obviously, there's the so you have the key point.
You have the tentpoles.
Right. You have the key points, which is basically Sidious comes out of the closet.
Yeah.
As a Sith. You know, He has a big emotional reveal. Guys,
Yes.
just wanted to gather you here. I'm a
Let
Sith.
you know.
I'm gonna choke you all before you can get out of this room.
Sorry.
And then I'm gonna use force powers.
I was born this way. I was born a Sith. So you have the revelation that the Chancellor is a Sith. You have in some form the Jedi need to be hunted. I don't think
down
right. I mean, I don't think we need to see them all die immediately. I don't think that's important.
No.
I think actually it works even better if you kind of see the beginnings of that, and then by the time you get to episode 4,
it's like,
there aren't any left.
Yeah.
Because it isn't an immediate thing. People, that wouldn't actually
There's
work.
been a significant amount of time between
In
3
fact,
and 4.
I
sure.
actually,
It makes sense.
when I was watching through the first time, even though I really liked episode 3 the first time I watched it, I was also 15, but I did have a thought that really all of those Jedi just died? Aren't they Jedi? I mean, how is it that easy to get the jump on a Jedi?
Right.
Can you just dupe them?
Because it's like, even if they don't know anything about what's going on, at least they,
we have seen
they're
Jedi,
capable fighters.
If you put a gun to a Jedi's back and you're about to pull the trigger,
It's like,
they know.
yeah.
They can, lightsaber that shit and run away. I mean, sure, not all of them would. Some of them would die, but they were all just mass executed.
Immediately.
So
it's
it's the same
you have to
disconnect.
use the
Are they superheroes or are they not?
Right. So you have to, I think it again makes a lot more sense that over the period of 20 years they've been sort
systematically
of systematically eradicated because they've offered a 1 million credit reward to out these Jedi. So of course people are reporting them all the time, and they come in with giant destroyers and just blow them up.
That's another thing I think things he should talk about when he rewrites episode 3. How is he going to... We need more explanation, I think, for the Empire. Because George Lucas really portrays the Empire in such a black and white way. That people living under oppression, but I think we need to show more support. It was just the whole... Vote me all the power in the world, and everyone's like, yeah. And it's like, why are they saying yeah? Like,
right?
I want the other side. Give me a compelling reason why these people have been convinced.
I think he sowed that seed by making the Separatists a much more understandable entity. Especially in episode 2, the way they meet. The Separatists and the Senators meet. At least you get to see the Separatists and what they want. You get to see their motivations.
But I think the original inspiration for the Empire was probably the Nazis.
Oh, well, yeah.
Everyone walking in lockstep. And you kind of had that sort of. I mean, people are still doing research on exactly why so many Germans went along with it.
Having a more understandable...
We need to see...
It's a sci-fi film. You need a reason. You need a better reason.
Having a more understandable conflict, though, between the Separatists and the
I think that helps a lot.
Would go a long way towards spreading it. The chaos that happens in episode 3 is largely just a space battle over Coruscant that somehow doesn't affect the planet below. And all these all these other planets that you're like, well, where's this? This giant flower planet, and there's a giant mushroom planet, and there's this planet, and there's that planet.
That's great. Again, they have one geographical feature, but no one actually gives a shit.
What is this? Is this the Republic being plunged into chaos? Doesn't look like it from the looks of Coruscant. You have to see the chaos, and you have to understand why the chaos is happening.
That's did we ever see any civilians injured ever?
No.
Ever?
No.
Which could have helped. Why are these people terrified into voting emergency powers? Because their lines at that fucking guy with the frog chin. Did the line at his cantina get a little bit longer because of the rationing? I mean, don't have any more things for you, honey. The war has been too hard.
The war has been too hard. So with the climax of episode 2, then. So do we have any recommendations for episode 3 then? Anything else aside from the obviously,
I don't want to put too many words. I definitely want to see him change Padme's death. Give us a good reason for her to die.
Of course.
I don't know. She's lost the will to live.
Ooh,
I mean, I know these are based on serials that are just kind of basic entertainment, but really, it's
again, we need. We need a real reason.
You can't just say, well, the reason is we don't have a reason. No, thank you. Please come on.
You go ahead.
I'm not sure I have any specific suggestions.
I just have one.
Okay.
J.J. Abrams, hire this man for episodes 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah,
Hire
right.
hire this man.
Yeah, he's got good ideas.
He usually has good ideas. Right? I mean, Into Darkness.
No. We're talking
We're talking
this is a
about
letter to J.J. Abrams. Hire the man we
Oh!
are talking about.
See,
Yeah, see?
now I'm a fool on the internet.
Aren't we all? We're all fools on the internet. Cats and...
Oh yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that thing. I want to see Padme. I want to see that man hired. And
Yeah.
we have to
Bring him on as a story
I'm
advisor.
sure the thing that maybe this will be interesting to see him grapple with, how do we focus so much on Anakin's demise through Obi-Wan's eyes? Because Obi-Wan is still the main character, but Anakin is the focus of the action.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
right,
I mean, there's
I
got
like
to be
this-
some
well,
story
again,
grappling with that.
Yeah.
I liked his idea of Obi-Wan as the main character in the first trilogy, Luke as the main character in the second trilogy,
And then you have Darth Vader.
with Darth Vader as
slash
the connective tissue between.
Yeah,
them.
I think it's perfect.
I think that's excellent.
Yeah, and I just don't see why any... I mean, I guess...
Why did he not think of that?
Well, why didn't anyone at Fox tell him? But I mean, he's George Lucas,
Well,
so
yeah, there you go.
these things happen.
Maybe they tried.
Maybe they tried.
And then they got fired by George.
It's gonna be great.
All right. So
All right,
that
well,
sounds like a good wrap up for our
I think
fortnight
so.
podcast.
I think that that wraps up our second week of
Second fortnight.
the A2Pcast.
Weekly.
We said we were going to be doing this bi-weekly. I think we decided that weekly would be better, just because there's so much news coming out, particularly the new consoles. So expect another one next Wednesday. We should have it out to you guys then. We have some interesting topics already planned for that. Facebook.com/alive2play. That's our Facebook page. We're still building the site. Hopefully we will have that up by the next time we release a podcast. If you guys have any ideas, any suggestions for topics, be sure to drop us a line. We're at Twitter at alive2play. Again, the Facebook page as well. We have a Tumblr. Any of those means of communication are totally open. Give us suggestions, comments. If you think we're saying stupid things, by all means, let us know about that as well. We are here to foster debate and discussion. So for Josh Hartman and Mike Shipsky, I am Mike Reifenberry, the editor of Alive to Play. We will talk to you next week.